We have ourselves a power-packed episode today, hearing from three people engaged in faithful resistance. To provide a little inspiration and a lot of ideas for resisting, here's today's lineup. We'll start with the man behind the Edgewater Collective, which champions working with Jefferson County's Latino communities. Joel Newton is a very thoughtful and very savvy social justice leader. We'll share some tips on making the best, most effective calls to members of Congress from a local leader of Indivisible. And you'll hear from the person who's leading a class on protest safety training on Monday. So let's get to it. The Edgewater Collective started more than a decade ago to connect the Edgewater community to local schools and has slowly evolved into an organization working to lift up Latino communities in all of Jefferson County. We recently spoke with Joel Newton, who is the heart and soul and brains behind the Edgewater Collective. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start with the heart part first, although I'm sure there's a lot of brains involved in it too. Why did you start the collective to begin with, and why did you help guide it to where it is today?
Yeah, over 12 years ago, our family moved to Edgewater, and we enrolled our kids in our local elementary school, Lumberg Elementary. And at that time, it was about 80% Latino. And we really wanted to connect into the community, learn from the community. And we began to realize there were really some big needs in our community, but also some great opportunities to connect our community with our schools and to really meet those needs together. And Edgewater Collective grew out of that desire to connect needs and opportunities.
And I'm thinking you've done a whole lot of learning things and then pandemic things. Can you give me a list of the kinds of things that you've done?
Yeah, the interesting part is obviously I'm a white male and learning a lot from our Latino community and a lot of just the interconnectedness of our community. And a lot of that came out during the pandemic, where a lot of our Latino leaders literally saved lives by connecting resources, vaccines, community resources to our Latino community in the area.
So I see from material on your website that was just last fall that you really kind of redrew the mission. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so for a long time, about a decade, we were focused on the Edgewater community. But as we began to connect with Latino leaders, we began to realize the needs were bigger than just our area. And because of the displacement of gentrification, a lot of our Latino families are moving out of the Jefferson area. And so we began to realize there was a real need for an organization like ours that could work alongside our Latino community members around education, economics, and civic engagement. So we really spread the mission of our organization beyond just the Edgewater area to all of Jefferson County.
So I would love to connect this to faithful resistance. You've been faithfully resisting for a very long time. How is it different now? How is it different now?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We changed our mission to focus on all of Jefferson County, working with Latino communities in September. That was before the election. I would have hoped personally the election would have turned out differently, but it was kind of fortuitous that our mission expansion came in September, because that really put us in a place where we could really work with community partners to faithfully resist some of the policies of the federal government and really work alongside Latino community members to help them feel more safe and more connected under the current administration.
Yeah, I know a lot of us are just tearing our hair out and wondering what in the world we can do. You're doing things. What can we do? What can we do, for example, to help Edgewater and the collective and beyond? You've got a point of view that I think is different for us.
Yeah, I think in November, we really started to get community leaders together to say, what can we do to listen to the needs of our Latino communities and actually do things strategically? And so what we've really been working on with community partners is doing know your rights trainings in schools, in the community, so that our immigrant communities can really get a sense of what are the constitutional rights they have and how do they utilize them to protect their families. Because we really believe that knowledge is power. And for a lot of our immigrant communities right now, they don't feel a sense of power. So by talking about their rights, helping them gain knowledge on how they can protect themselves and their families, they really regain that power in what can be a very scary time for them and their families.
What could a person do if they wanted to resist, but they're not the bullhorn type? They're not the I'm going to go get arrested at a protest type. What could they do for your organization that still is resisting?
Yeah, I think a great thing is to learn what our rights are. Now, these rights are regardless if we're an immigrant or a citizen or not. Understanding what our rights are is really important for even American citizens. And the reason why that's important is because we really encourage people, if they feel safe doing it, if they witness somebody who is an immigrant having an interaction with an ICE immigration official, to step in and insert themselves into that interaction, because there's real power that we see in other communities when white citizens engage in immigrants that are interacting with ICE and speak up. There's real change that can happen, and that can really help protect immigrants in our own communities. The second thing is really speaking up to elected officials and advocating. So writing letters to our U.S. representatives, our senators, encouraging them to speak up and ensure that our federal government is following the U.S. Constitution, because we do have various circumstances, especially this weekend, where our federal government is not following the Constitution, and that puts our immigrant community at risk. And so speaking up to elected officials is very important.
What's your hope for the next year? Let's end with that.
Yeah, my hope is really, it comes down to relationships. So we really want to create an environment where people can really connect with members of our immigrant communities. Even though we might not speak the same language, we can hear stories and connect our own stories with our immigrant neighbors. And there's a real sense of community. I think there's too much dividedness in our communities right now. And if we can really create spaces where relationships can be built and we can hear and understand what people's stories are, I think that can help us grow as a community.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Best of luck to the Edgewater Collective. What a good guy. So Joel mentioned reaching out to our elected officials. Nice segue there, Joel. Right after the big vote on the continuing resolution recently, the one Chuck Schumer is taking so much grief for, the group Indivisible held a workshop at our church, and Robin Koberneck had tips on making calls to Congress.
We live in Colorado, and if you want to impact what's happening in Washington, unless you go there, you're going to be on the phone, right? You're going to need the most impactful things that we all can do is to have regular conversations by calling our members of Congress, our MOCs. So you're going to pick up the phone. You'll probably get voicemail, right? And you're going to say, "Hi, my name is Robin Koberneck. I'm a constituent, and here's my zip code." And then you're going to say whatever your message is. And the important thing is, they don't want to hear it if it's some general thing like, "I'm really concerned about the state of democracy in our country. Thanks for calling," right? What is really even more impactful is if you can say, "I know the budget is being discussed right now in the Senate, and here's how I feel about it. Vote yes or vote no on whatever it is." If I don't know what your feelings about this continuing resolution were, but that's what they needed to hear is yes or no. Because all that staff person is doing when they're not answering the phone, they're listening to that voicemail and they're just making tallies. So they're not, I know you guys are smart people and you have a lot of deep thoughts. They don't care because they're just going to make a little tally mark on the yes or the no. And the beauty of this is, though, it's easy for us to do, right? We don't have to have a long speech put together. And then what they do is, at the end of whatever their period of, work is, they will report, well, Senator Hickenlooper, I've had calls all day long. I took 500 calls, and my buddy over here took, 400, and we tallied them all up, and 80% of them are saying no, no on that continuing resolution, and 20% said yes, and that's really what the senator is hearing. Now, we're not the only group that's out there. I mean, there's all kinds of progressive groups out there and all kinds of email, but by the end of the week, both Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett voted no, and I don't think that would have happened without calls from constituents. So it matters.
Indeed, it matters. And you can find out more about Indivisible's work at indivisiblecolorado.net. Now, one more thing. Looking forward, here's a peek at next week's Mobilizing Monday workshop at JUC on how to be safe attending a protest. So we're so glad today to be joined by Piper Perry, who goes to Jefferson Unitarian Church, a very active member there, and who is key to this next Mobilizing Monday at Jefferson Unitarian Church, because it's about teaching protest safety training. Welcome, Piper, and tell us a little bit about the class that you're going to be teaching.
We're going to be talking about different things that you should know before you go to a protest, ways to keep yourself and your loved ones or your group safe during the protest, and some of the things that you can do or should be done after a protest. So it's actually a multi-step process rather than, I show up at a protest. And it's based on me going to a lot of protests and seeing people hurt in a variety of different ways and trying to minimize that as much as we can.
Tell me a story, Piper, just one little story about seeing something that alarmed you and that you hope to avoid in the future.
When I was in college in the 2011s, 2010s, it took me 3 times to get through college, to be clear, to get a degree. But I was a journalism student, and we were covering Occupy Denver. And I was there the day that the SWAT teams came down on there, and I was talking to a mother who was looking for her son, who's a young adult, downtown Denver, near all those colleges. Everyone was, very excited, really trying to change the world we live in. And we both got guns pointed at us by the SWAT team that had come in. And that was incredibly scary. There are some things that you can do in that situation. There's some things that you can say in that situation that are probably better than other things. I want people to understand what they're going into and how to keep themselves safe, both inside and afterwards.
We don't want to scare people away. So I'm so
not.
glad you're doing it.
Right, because we want people to be involved. We want people to do this in a way, but we always have to keep in mind that protesting can be a dangerous thing to do. And so let's make it as safe as we possibly can.
Let me just ask you one more thing, and that is, why do you think protesting is a powerful tool? Why do you put yourself out there?
It's not so much speaking truth to power as it is knowing that other people care about the same things you do. 34,000 people showed up for Bernie and AOC this weekend. 34,000 people in the Denver metro, Colorado area wanted their voices heard so much that they showed up to hear a different plan for a different way. Protesting is a way for people to both make themselves heard and to be in community. And part of being in that community is being safe in that community. We protect us.
Thank you. This is just so on the money for what we apparently are going to be facing for some time now. So thanks for doing the training, and it's we'll have all the details coming up, but it's Monday the 31st at 6:00 at Jefferson Unitarian Church, and we'll repeat that again. Thank you, Piper. Thanks for doing this.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, on to the calendar for the next 10 days. Tonight, March 27th at 7:00. There's a Sanctuary for All benefit concert at the Marquis Theater. That's at 20th and Larimer in Denver. Tickets are $20. Supports immigrant families in Colorado. Sign the online petition for demanding the release of labor and immigrant rights activist Jeanette Visquera. She's being held by ICE. You'll find a link to the petition in the description on the YouTube page. Saturday, March 29th, 10:00, JUC. Join teams of JUCers to hand out Know Your Rights flyers. Sunday, March 30th, Trans Day of Visibility Rally at the State Capitol, noon to 4:00, sponsored by the new Brick by Brick Collective and the Common Ground People's Collective. Monday, March 31st, Mobilizing Monday at JUC at 6 p.m. It's Piper's protest safety training. Wednesday, April 2nd at 6, a virtual event by Indivisible on protecting Colorado school boards from Christian nationalists. Register at indivisiblecolorado.net. Thursday, April 3rd at 7, the Justice Matters series at JUC, How Waste and Fraud in U.S. Healthcare Affects Us All. You'll hear from a retired physician and professor emeritus of emergency medicine at the CU Denver School of Medicine. He's also a past director of the Emergency Medical Services at Denver Health. And Saturday, April 5th, noon to 4, the Hands Off rally at the State Capitol. This could be a biggie, a mass mobilization day to fight back against Trump's unprecedented power grab. If you have ideas for interviews or events, please email us at faithfulresistance@jeffersonunitarian.org. And keep doing what we always do. Hold each other up and keep doing the next right thing.
Go out, do the next right thing.